Designed inputs shape mood. Most people think deep work begins when they decide to focus. They sit down. They open the document. They clear the calendar. They close a few tabs. They tell themselves that now is the time to begin. But focus is rarely the first event. Focus is usually the result of a field that has already been shaped. Before attention gathers, inputs have already entered the system. Before the task begins, the room has already signaled something. The screen has already trained a rhythm. The last conversation may have left residue. The tools, sounds, interruptions, temperature, objects, and signals around the person have already participated in shaping the mood from which work will be attempted. This completes the mood to state to focus arc. Input shapes mood. Mood shapes state. State shapes attention. Attention shapes focus. Focus makes meaningful work possible. The chain matters. Input, mood, state, attention, focus, meaningful work. Most people treat inputs as background. EL1X1R interprets them differently. Inputs are not merely consumed. They participate in the conditions from which focus emerges. An input is anything that enters the system and participates in shaping readiness. Some inputs are obvious. A message, a sound, a meeting, a screen, a conversation, a room, a tool, a drink, a task, a deadline. Other inputs are more subtle. Lighting, temperature, objects, language, pacing, the chair, the desk, the first sound before work, the way a room is arranged, the sensory cues that appear before attention is asked to gather. Inputs are not good or bad by default. They are signals. The point is not that inputs are bad. The point is that inputs train readiness. An input does not need to be dramatic to matter. Repeated small inputs can teach the system what kind of moment it is entering. A rapid signal teaches one kind of readiness. A serious room teaches another. A fragmented screen teaches one rhythm. A protected workspace teaches another. A repeated interruption teaches the system to remain available for interruption. A repeated beginning can teach the system that a different mode is being entered. Inputs are not merely consumed. They participate in configuration. Mood is not random. Mood may feel like background, but it is influenced by what repeatedly enters the system. Urgent inputs can train urgency. Fragmented inputs can train fragmentation. Chaotic inputs can train vigilance. Noisy inputs can train scanning. Calm inputs can support steadiness. Serious inputs can support seriousness. Deliberate inputs can prepare the field for deliberate work. This does not mean an input controls mood completely. It does not mean a person becomes whatever the environment gives them. It means inputs participate. They leave residue. They establish rhythm. They cue readiness. They tell the system what kind of state may be needed next. A person who moves from urgent messages into meaningful work may still be carrying urgency. A person who moves from fragmented content into sustained reading may still be carrying fragmentation. A person who moves from conflict into interpretation may still be carrying defensiveness. A person who moves from scattered inputs into serious work may need time before attention can stay. The issue is not moral. The issue is carryover. Repeated accidental inputs produce accidental states. Repeated deliberate inputs can prepare the field for deliberate work. Mood is the color field from which state emerges. A mood does not do the work. A mood does not guarantee focus. A mood does not replace effort, skill, or judgment. But mood helps make certain states more available. A restless mood makes restless states easier to enter. A defensive mood makes protective states easier to enter. A rushed mood makes unstable attention more likely. A scattered mood makes continuity more difficult. A serious mood makes sustained attention more available. A steady mood makes returnable attention more likely. This is why designed inputs matter. If mood helps make certain states more available, then the inputs that shape mood before work begins become structurally important. They are not decoration. They are not merely atmosphere. They participate in the conditions from which state appears. And state determines what attention can do. Attention does not operate from nowhere. Attention emerges from state. A fragmented state produces fragmented attention. A vigilant state produces scanning attention. A rushed state produces unstable attention. A depleted state makes sustained attention more expensive. A steady state makes attention more returnable. A serious state makes attention more willing to stay. This is why focus cannot be understood only as discipline. A person may sincerely intend to focus, but intention enters a state. If that state is configured for switching, attention may keep switching. If that state is configured for urgency, attention may rush. If that state is configured for defense, attention may scan. If that state is configured for meaningful work, attention has a better chance of gathering. Focus is not commanded from nowhere. Focus becomes possible when attention can organize around what matters. And attention becomes more available when the state supports it. Designed inputs do not force a state. They prepare the field from which a state becomes more available. This distinction matters. Designed inputs do not force attention. They do not control mood. They do not create focus by magic. They do not replace effort, skill, judgment, or meaning. They prepare the conditions from which attention may become more available. A cleared desk does not make a person focused, but it can reduce competing signals. A closed door does not create deep work, but it can mark protection. Headphones do not guarantee concentration, but they can signal transition. A consistent chair does not produce insight, but it can become associated with a certain mode of work. A serious notebook does not create meaning, but it can cue a different kind of attention. A cold drink does not give focus, but it can participate in the beginning of a state transition. A deliberate opening sound does not force the system into work, but repeated over time, it can become a threshold marker. A first sip does not create focus, but it can help the system recognize that a different kind of moment is beginning. A protected block of time does not guarantee deep work, but it creates a container. A room that signals seriousness does not complete the task, but it can help the system understand what kind of attention is being asked for. These things are not magic. They are cues. They help the system recognize a different kind of moment is beginning. That recognition matters. Because the system does not shift states only through command. It shifts through signals, repetition, meaning, and environmental structure. Designed input is not manipulation. It is not a productivity hack. It is not a supplement claim. It is not mood control. It is not product magic. Designed input does not say, "This object will make you focus." It says, "The conditions before focus matter." A designed input does not own the transition. It supports the transition. The goal is not control. The goal is preparation. The human transition remains the hero, not the object, not the ingredient, not the ritual. The transition. The threshold sequence remains simple. Pause. Prepare. Commit. Protect. Begin. This sequence does not create focus by force. It marks the transition into conditions where focus becomes easier to access. Pause interrupts accidental momentum. Prepare organizes the environment. Commit gives the work a clear object. Protect reduces competing signals. Begin moves the system into contact with the work. These are not productivity steps. They are transition architecture. The point is not to manufacture performance. The point is to help the system cross from ordinary wakefulness or fragmentation into meaningful work. The question is not only, what do I want to do? The deeper question is, what state transition am I entering? This is the category shift. Not merely, what drink do I want? But, what kind of state am I preparing to enter? That question changes the meaning of the object. It changes the meaning of the room. It changes the meaning of the first action. It changes the meaning of the threshold. This is why EL1X1R studies designed inputs carefully. A future state support object is not meaningful because it contains ingredients. Ingredients are only one kind of input. Taste is input. Temperature is input. Sound is input. Texture is input. Container is input. Language is input. Timing is input. Context is input. The object becomes meaningful only if it helps protect the transition into meaningful work. This is where a future EL1X1R focus object may eventually belong. Not as a promise, not as a shortcut, not as a claim that a drink gives focus, but as one designed input among many that can help mark and support the movement from fragmentation into calm commitment. The transition remains the hero. The question is not simply, how do I focus? The better question is, what has been entering the system before focus is being asked for? What sounds? What signals? What interruptions? What objects? What language? What room? What rhythm? What residue? What repeated beginning? These are not secondary details. They shape the conditions from which focus emerges. Mood shapes state. State shapes attention. Attention shapes focus. Focus makes meaningful work possible. This does not mean inputs determine everything. They do not. Effort matters. Skill matters. Meaning matters. Judgment matters. But the field matters too. Designed inputs do not force a state. They prepare the field from which a state becomes more available. Accidental inputs produce accidental states. Deliberate inputs can prepare the field for deliberate work. The goal is not control. The goal is preparation. The transition remains the hero.